I'd like to welcome everybody this afternoon to Imperial as One's Belonging series of interviews. They're a series of candid interviews with BAME students, academics, professionals who are sharing an insight into what makes them feel they belong. So this week we've got the pleasure of having Paul Brown, MBE, and he's a mechanical instruments workshop manager at Imperial College. So we're going to now have a nice discussion with Paul to find out about his journey at Imperial and as a person of color. So Paul, I'm going to open up. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Let's start off with how have you been, and kind of like tell us a bit about your story.
Well, I've been well. We've been living through some challenging times with COVID at the moment, but we're coping.
Yeah.
So I'm the son of Jamaican parents who arrived in the UK in the 1960s. They raised four of us and instilled some good values in us, which have stood us in good stead.
Mm-hmm.
And the key amongst these were just treating people with respect and kind of being polite.
Mm-hmm.
My role here at Imperial is the mechanical instrumentation workshop manager in the Department of Physics. And together with my team, we manufacture scientific apparatus for research experiments. And one of our most recent experiments, which we've just worked on, is instrumentation. One of 10 bits of instrumentation, which is on board the European Space Agency Solar Orbiter mission,
Mm-hmm.
and it's flying around space, taking pictures of the sun and sending data back to physicists who are analysing the data.
Wow. Just before we get to all of your, I was going to say globe trotting, but we're talking about solar system trotting. Yeah. Before we go on to that, let's just track back a bit into. You said that you're one of the Windrush generation. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess second generation. Yeah.
Second generation. So, were you born in the UK or were you born?
I was born in the UK.
Yeah.
I was born in Croydon.
In Croydon, okay. So a Londoner, or just outside London, yeah. And so in your early days, before coming to Imperial, you said that your parents instilled some strong values into you and your siblings, right? Working hard, respect for others. How was your academic journey? How did you find schooling, etc., when you were here in England? Well, growing up in England in those early days, what was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I often hark back to those days and think that what I now try and do, or what I know about the schooling system, I don't think my kind of parents had kind of knew, much about the schooling system when they first came here. It was like, get your children into the nearest school.
Yeah.
I was never the most academic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, looking back now when I see, and I've done it myself, getting children tutored and all
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing, I think I maybe would have benefited from a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I found school particularly easy.
Right.
And so I left school at 16 and went off and did an apprenticeship in mechanical craft engineering.
So why mechanical craft engineering? What was it about that which attracted you?
Well, I went to a school in South Norwood called Stanley Tech High School, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a really good kind of DT engineering department, and I, got to spend a lot of time in there, and they had various machine tools, and the projects that I got to work on, I just, was good at it, and
Yeah.
found a passion for it, and decided, to pursue it when I left school.
Okay, so you left school, going down not an academic route as such, but you were looking for. Did you go looking for an apprenticeship, or how did you come about getting an apprenticeship?
Well, I mean, I left school and I didn't know what I was going to do actually, and in terms of work. But there was a government scheme at the time called the YTS, this youth training scheme, and I managed to get a place on the youth training scheme at a EITB centre, which is the Engineering Industrial Training Board. So I managed to get a space there under this scheme. And I was on that scheme for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks. And then when the local employers were looking for apprentices, they came straight there. I guess that they thought if people are there doing this off of their own back, then we're going to find some good recruits. So that's where they found me. The company I worked for, which was Hooks and Precision Castings. They hired me.
They hired you. And so how long was your apprenticeship with them for?
It was a 4-year indentured apprenticeship. And, so it wasn't, like just getting a job. You basically were given a set of indentures and your father had to sign them along with you entering into this 4-year contract.
What kind of projects did you do? Can you remember what kind of projects you did while you were there? And
well, the first year when we were at the ITB, you were kind of rotating around the different areas, learning to use the different machine tools. So milling machines, lathes, and there was even a couple of weeks on the bench, kind of learning how to use hacksaws, files, that type of thing. And then we had a stint in the electronics workshop as well to try and just bring it all together.
Right. So it was a well-rounded experience, a holistic. So you've got a bit of expertise on a number of different engineering aspects.
Yeah, and they've stood me in good stead being here at Imperial, because you need to be a well-rounded kind of technician when you're working somewhere like Imperial. If I'd gone into industry, you tend to be a machinist, you tend to rock up at the same machine every day, and that's the machine you work on. Whereas is here with my team, one day you can be using a lathe and the next day you can be, doing some welding. So you really need that well-rounded
right. So it was a really good preparation for what you're doing now then.
Absolutely.
So tell me about how you got from your apprenticeship to now being at Imperial. And I haven't mentioned it, but just tell us how you got here.
Well,
and when you got here.
I finished my apprenticeship in 4 years after I started it, and I could see that the factory that I worked in was in its dying days, I think.
Right. Okay.
And I wanted to leave. And some friends of mine who worked at Imperial suggested that I come and work at Imperial College, and I looked at them and thought to myself, I'm a machinist. What would somewhere like Imperial be doing with somebody like me?
Right.
But a job came up, and I applied and was successful, and arrived here on the 2nd of July 1990. So 2 weeks ago, I would have been at Imperial College for 30 years. And I arrived and I worked in the workshop that I now manage as the junior technician. If you'd have told me when I arrived that 15 years later I'd be managing the same workshop, I would have said you were mad.
So wow, that's congratulations. I don't know whether to say congratulations, happy birthday, or belated happy birthday. Right. No, that's wonderful. So you've been here 30 years and 2 weeks now. Yeah.
Man, boy, I arrived when I was 5.
Right. I was gonna say, man, that 4-year apprenticeship. I understand, my brother. Right. So in that time, you've moved. You basically said that you've gone from being a junior technician when you started, or a junior apprentice when you started, to now being the manager. What was that journey like for you, going from were there any highs, lows? What were some key moments in that process, would you say?
Well, it's again. So I worked in that workshop, in the main workshop in the Department of Physics for 3 years actually, and then how physics is structured, it's split up into a series of groups, and 3 years in, I went to work for one of the research groups, which was the Applied Optics group at the time. They had a satellite workshop, a small satellite workshop that I went to work in. And I worked with those guys for 12 years.
Right.
And during that time, the guy or the person who managed that workshop retired. And that smaller workshop needed supervising.
Yeah.
So I duly applied for that position and became the supervisor of a smaller workshop, and then built my own small team there actually, and got some experience with upgrading the facilities. And a few years after that, the main workshop position became available. So the guy I worked for when I arrived, he then retired 15 years after I started, and I think I'd gained enough supervisory experience in the smaller workshop to apply for the larger workworkshop. And again, I have a problem with doubting myself, and was very worried about applying for the job. One of the things I've always I've tried to do over the years is seek counsel and have mentors. For the mentors and the counsel I've seeked out. I mean, I've noticed there's one of the people on the chat here, Dr. Richards, who's a sounding board of mine, and has been instrumental in my career trajectory, and others, to tell me, you can do it, go for it, and I think sometimes you just need that assurance from others.
So if it's Mark Richards you're referring to, I believe, yeah?
Yeah.
So although he's in your domain, he was also very instrumental in giving you that positive reinforcement that where you had doubts, he could bring the not rays of wisdom, but the reassurance. Is that how it works, kind of thing? Or just the honest?
As I say, him and others. I mean,
yeah.
I remember another scenario, and I'm going off track here a little bit, but my children were in school, and I was invited once upon a time to apply to be a school governor.
Right, okay.
And again, I would doubt myself and say, well, what value can I add? I can't do that. And my manager at the time, and I'll mention him by name, he's retired now as well, a guy called Harry Vine, he sat me down and said, Paul, you can do this. You know, and you will learn from it, and you will grow from it. And so I did. I became a parent governor, and in the end, I ended up being vice chair of governors. But so it gave me, the experience that has again stood me in good stead.
Okay. So from each of the experiences, even though you may have felt a bit trepidatious or a bit scared or have a little bit of self-doubt, there was always someone who was there to give you, as you said, you always seek counsel, which I think is also good. And you also make sure that you have people around you who you can solicit their views.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I used the word mentor earlier because it's about, people challenging you as well. It's about, somebody sort of saying, where is your career trajectory going? And, what are the next steps? And, following up with you 3 months, 6 months later and saying, well, you said you were going to do this. What have you done about it? And it's very important. And I encourage anybody to have a professional mentor.
So to some extent, they were helping to keep you focused. So would you say that, or am I putting words in your mouth?
Focused is, I wouldn't say focused. I think it's just opportunities come up.
Right.
There are nagging doubts. And I think that sometimes when you talk it through with others, they are able to tell you that either you're being silly, or you know, and they kind of can give you, you know, answer some of the questions or some of the doubts you have, the nagging doubts. And I mean, some of the things I've taken on over the years, after kind of speaking to people, I don't regret them, you know, and they've helped me. But in the beginning, you know, you approach with caution.
Yeah, fair enough. So now we're here at Imperial. You're the manager of the workshop. 15 years after starting as a junior apprentice, you're now a manager. What has been some of the high points and some of the low points I'm going to ask for? So what has been some of the high points that you would say that you've experienced being here?
Well, I think one of the high points for me was a few years after I took over in the main workshop. You know, we'd won some funding to refurbish the workshop. So our head of department at the time, Professor Sir Peter Knight, managed to win us £3.2 million to refurbish the workshop. Ooh. So something that probably won't happen in my working life again. You know, our workshop, we used to produce some fantastic work, but it was with old kit, and just seeing that transformation. And you know, so we had the infrastructure put in, and then we went shopping with basically £1 million in our back pocket to refurbish our workshop. And you know, looking at that task again, when we first started, it looked like a mountain to climb, but it's a facility that we have today that I'm very, very proud of. And you know, it's how it houses some first-class technicians in the Department of Physics.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I suppose, apart from having the joy of being able to have so much money to go and spend, that in itself can offer some challenges, right? What challenges did you encounter in trying to spend that £1 million and re-kit the workshop? Did you find it challenging at all?
Wayne, it was easy. Give me $1 million of your money and I'll tell you how to spend it. Look, it was challenging. And you know, the physics department gave us a remit and told us, you know, basically that we shouldn't go and buy things for buying's sake, and we shouldn't reduce the capacity that we had in the machine shop. But basically, we moved over from kind of manual machine tools to CNC. CNC means computer numerical control. Right. So basically, you know, you have a drawing, and you're able to then put your coordinates in and program the machine to produce your parts. And we had one of those machines in the machine shop, and we were able to go and buy a suite of them. These things aren't expensive. Sorry, these things aren't cheap. So it was quite easy to spend that money. I mean, each one of those machine tools, or the CNC ones, if you were to buy one today, they're £100,000 a piece. You know, you only need to buy a couple of those and a few other bits and pieces in it, and it's soon gone.
And the money's gone. Yeah. Okay. So with your new kit, your new challenges, you also mentioned earlier on that you recently, I think earlier on this year, you had sent some of your systems are on a space mission they're in a space mission. Can you elaborate on that? What were some of the challenges that you and your team faced with preparing equipment to be going into space? What was that like? Well,
I mean, these are some of our flagship kind of projects that we work on. You know, we can be asked. You know, somebody can come down from a teaching lab and say, you know, I've got a plate. Can you stick a hole in the corner for me? Because I need an earthing strap put on. It can be from that to, you know, things like these space missions. So I mentioned earlier that there are 10 instruments on the spacecraft, and Imperial College was charged with the responsibility of building one of those. Right. So it's a magnetometer, and what we do when we build these things is we've done them before in terms of space missions. So, you know, there's a whole group called the Space and Atmospheric Physics group. So we've done these projects before. and this is just the latest one that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
When we build these kind of boxes, we build 5 versions of it. We build a structural thermal model, we build an electrical model, we build a qualification model. And all of those models are put through a series of tests, vibration and all sorts, to make sure that, you know, they can survive launch, basically, because once the rocket launches, there's no calling it back. So most of if there are any problems, they'll be found out on the test bench or found out in the lab. And then once all of the tests are successful, then the research group will come back to us and say, right, we're ready to build the flight and the flight spare. Once they've been built and delivered, then they're sent off. I believe it was in Stevenage this time. There's a lab there where all of the instruments are put together in the lab, and then the spacecraft is fitted out, and then it was shipped to America, and it launched from Cape Canaveral in February. Challenges, there are always challenges. There are always challenges, but you know, we managed to kind of overcome them. A lot of the time, the challenges are time constraints. We're up against the clock, and we need to deliver on time.
It's funny, right? Because on one hand, what you've said is that when you have a challenge, right, you like to seek counsel because of kind of like an inner doubt which you have. But then when I challenge you about how was the challenge, it's kind of like, well, the only thing I needed to surmount was my initial doubt. But once I got in there, there's no stopping me. That's how how it's coming across. That you meet every challenge, you seek your counsel, but once you're on task, your confidence just exudes. That's how I'm reading it, Paul. Maybe I've got it wrong, but
I think it's probably just a problem I have. I do have a problem with doubting myself, and it's something that, you know, I've kind of learned to deal with by talking the issues through that are troubling me with others, and that kind of helps me.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, because the whole notion of managing a team for something which is so precise that it's going into, there's no, the margins of error for sending something up into space. It's not like me going into my workshop out the back and cutting a piece of wood, and if the piece of wood isn't quite straight, I say, well, it don't matter, right? Right? But if it's a millimeter or fractions of a millimeter out to the things which you're assembling, that could be whether or not you'll get the readings or you won't get the readings. So there's so many, it's so precise.
Well, some may say, why is the training for you know, an engineering craft technician so long? Why do you have to spend 4 years? Now, I think it takes that time to learn your craft. I mean, you know, we work to micron precision, and it's something that you kind of build up over many years. Now, you can go to university and gain a degree in 3-4 years, but you know, that skill that we learn, it does take 4 years to learn that skill. And you know, it's about having your practical and kind of academic knowledge of the subject, but you know, we're working with kind of materials and what have you, and you know, for instance, putting a thread in a hole, we can feel whether it's going smoothly. You know, there's a skill there, just being able to feel what's happening. We can listen to a cutter against a piece of material and know whether whether the cutter's blunt or whatever, and it takes time to learn that.
To me, it's a different style of training, but yet it's still as precise, it's still as accurate as any academic pursuit that you might undertake. It's still learning your craft, whether it's in an academic arena or in this technical, truly technical arena which you've got there, which you've been doing. I think it's absolutely fantastic, right? I do know that when we spoke earlier on, you had said something about some initiatives which you had done within your department, or when you became manager. I think an apprenticeship scheme. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, I mean, when I arrived here at Imperial, there was an apprenticeship scheme running, and I think so. I said I came here in the 90s, in the early 90s, or in 1990, and in 97, Blair came to power, and he basically told every child that they could go to university, and apprenticeships kind of went out of fashion. They sort of kind of fell away, and we stopped the apprenticeship scheme here at Imperial, and I was fortunate enough to go on a BME leaders program, which I think was started by Imperial as one at the time, and I had to do a project. And one of my projects was, how we could restart the scheme here at Imperial. So it was born there. And then we had to sort of take it to senior management and ask them if they would fund it. And it's not just a physics or a departmental scheme. This is a college-wide scheme. Because what we've seen is, if we don't train the next generation, we're gonna end up with a skill shortage. I think the country we were almost ahead of the curve. The government have realised now there's going to be a skill shortage, and there's now this apprenticeship levy and what have you. We were a tad ahead of the curve. The scheme started in 2011, and we hire 2 apprentices each year, and we send them off to, similar to the EITB that I went to, we send them off to Kingston College for 1 year, and then they come back to Imperial in years 2, 3, and 4, and rotate around 6 departments. Again, learning their craft, but also learning about what each individual department does. And hopefully what we say is, with natural wastage like retirements and what have you, we hope that at the end of the 4-year program we can place them in one of the departments.
Fantastic.
So in fact, just this year or a few months ago, I hired one of the apprentices I took on a few years ago into the physics workshop. He's 22 years old, and I can almost see a carbon copy of myself.
Okay, just let me know his name. If I'm still around in 30 years' time, I'll try and interview. One final thing, or another thing. It says Paul Brown MBE, right? Now, explain that to me.
It's difficult to explain to you, Wayne, because again, if you'd have told me as a young man that one day I would have been bestowed such an honor, I would have said it was unconscionable. I hear about these things, not necessarily even the birthday honors, but I normally wake up on New Year's Eve, and the news is on, and you hear that the honors list is out, and you kind of see all these people like David Beckham or Lewis Hamilton picking up these awards, and I just was, I mean, one day I was at home a Saturday, and a letter arrived, and it had on the front, "On Her Majesty's service," and my heart sank. And I'll tell you why my heart sank, because that was the furthest thing from my mind, and what I thought it was, my time has come to go and do jury service. That's honestly. And I opened the letter, and I will share the first paragraph with you, what I can remember from memory. It said, "Dear Sir, the Prime Minister has asked me to inform you in strictest confidence that she has taken advice from Theresa May at the time, who's taken advice from the awards committee, and she is recommended to submit your name to the Queen, who may be graciously pleased to award you an MBE." So the Prime Minister asked you, apparently, because the Queen is never refused. So if you're going to refuse, you refuse the Prime Minister. You don't refuse,
refuse the
Queen.
Right.
and so the letter was signed off. I always laugh at this. The letter was signed off. I am, sir, your obedient servant. So it was a fantastic time for me and my family. And you know, one of the things that was special to me was being able to take my mum with me to pick up that award in the October. You know, as a child, she would have grown up in the country, in the country on the rural part, in rural Jamaica, learning about the mother country, learning about the UK, hearing about places like Buckingham Palace and what have you, and you know, never imagining that, you know, she would even visit somewhere like that. So they came here, invited here in the 1960s, worked hard, and for me, for her to see one of her offspring, if you like, be recognised in that way was absolutely fantastic. So I was recognised for services to higher education, and you know, we often get asked here, you know, do we feel appreciated? Do we feel part of our community? You know, it takes time for somebody has to sit down and write that recommendation. I was really gobsmacked.
Fantastic. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to open it up for questions to see if anybody else would like to ask some questions. If not, I've got a few other questions which we could go through. Let's have a look. If you want to ask a question, if you just raise your hand, or I can. Sunday. How could I miss Sunday? Come on in, my friend. Come on in. Unmute yourself.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paul.
Nice.
Paul is so wonderful. I mean, I have to praise him, because despite the fact that Paul is always in the background, he doesn't show himself well enough. This amazing thing that he's doing is incredible with the apprentice. Well, two questions I want to ask Paul. In the days when Imperial One was created, even up to now, Paul was a very quiet contributor. Paul, you've never shown yourself right at the front, even though you have the power and the energy to do so. I just want to know why. And secondly, the apprentice scheme you're doing, I want to see more BME students on that. I will help you. Yeah? All the ones I've been dealing with, they're all not me. I want to see more of them, because I think we've had 2 in my department and they've done fantastically. So we need more of them around. Please, let's get them in. Yeah. Okay. So
we are trying, Sunday. We're trying. I hear the same message from you. I hear the same message from Mark, and we're trying where that's concerned. Right. You speak about Imperial as one. Yes, you can't be front and center in everything, Sunday, and you know, you always need your foot soldiers, and I guess I've been one of the foot soldiers, but you know, I'm pleased to be able to say that, you know, the Imperial one gave me the opportunity to go on the BME Leaders Program, and I'm pleased to be able to actually say that the apprenticeship scheme was born out of the project that I did when I was given that opportunity. Yeah, maybe going forward, you know, we heard Rudy last week. We're 15 years old now, Imperial as one, but maybe going forward, we can work together and do a bit more.
I think Imperial one needs you. I know when I call upon you for Creative Future, you always stand up. Or when I get students that come into Imperial and they want to look around, last minute they'll come, that's me. I'll call you and you will respond. So that's fantastic. But I think Imperial one needs you in that FT moment now.
I agree 100%, and I can see Sarah is also agreeing. Yes, Paul, bring it in, man, bring it in. Not even bring it on, bring it in. Right. So yeah, I agree. I think it's about mobilization, and there's a number of things which you said which I think all of us need to learn from, i.e. seek counsel, right? Don't just allow fear or our own internal self-doubts to prevent us from seeking counsel to make the right decision. Be informed. And I think with all the different expertise that we have, I think that's a really great model for us to aspire to. So yeah, definitely, I think a close collaboration between all of us would be incredibly good. And I was really touched when you said that you were able to bring your mum to Buckingham Palace, to be honest. When you consider, just for example, the things which have happened during the Windrush scandal and all of those things, the fact that that your mother could see your achievement, right, and the recognition of your achievement it's a proud moment. I'm 100% sure it was a very proud moment for her. I'm gonna ask I don't know if anyone else has a question, but I was gonna ask another. How did you feel when you heard about the Windrush scandal and the way that many generations have been treated after their years of committed service?
It's painful. Mm-hmm. You know, we know that, you know, my grandfather came here and fought in the war, and you know, my parents came later and worked here. They were invited here to rebuild the country after the war, and came here on British passports. And I watched a program recently of a guy who was, you know, caught up in the scandal, and you know, it was just, you know, by not being deemed as British after working here, or came here on his parents' passport, not being deemed British. So then his employer, who he'd worked for many years, they said, you know, we know that, you know, you've worked here for us for many years, but you just don't have your documentation, so we can't employ you anymore. And the guys, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but his whole world fell apart. Yeah, it's painful. It was painful to watch. And I think that, you know, I don't want to get too political, but you know, our ex-prime minister and ex-home secretary before that has a lot to answer for. I can't.
That's fine. I totally understand. One other question then. In light of now the Black Lives Matter movement, in what's been going on, how can we, I suppose, what kind of steps could we take to try to make things progress a bit more for Black people, for people of color in this country? What have you got any suggestions, recommendations that you might think could be quite useful? I know I've put you on the spot. This is really out of left field.
I mean, I think, you know, it's about us reaching out to our young people, and again, telling our stories, helping them to see, you know, where we've got to. They have to try and build on the foundations that, you know, my parents' generation have laid for them. Because, you know, those guys came and worked hard, and when they did come, they didn't have it easy. And it's a little better for us now. We were born here and we're kind of accepted, but when they came, it wasn't easy at all. So, you know, they've laid a foundation, and it's for us to build on it. And a lot of, you know, what I try and do as for myself is try and be an ambassador for those who are coming behind me. You know, again, I've mentioned Mark a couple of times, but one of the things that he's done, we've noticed over the years that we're not getting the physics students coming into you know, BME students coming into the Department of Physics, and it's troubled him for many years. And what he's done over many years is try to build a group called, we call ourselves now the Blackett Lab family. And what it is, you know, we've got students who have been through and done kind of physics degrees, gone on into law and school teaching and all sorts. But now what we're trying to do is get out there and spread the word. And what we're hearing from some of these students is it's nice to turn up at places like this and see people like themselves, even one or two in the year group. And also, if they're struggling, then they can tap into, you know, the Blackett Lab family and speak to somebody who's been there before them. So it's that type of thing we need to do, and we need to do it, you know, in all areas, really. Yeah. We need to support the young people. Yeah. And again, you know, my buzzword for today, but, you know, be mentors for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that idea. Something practical. So you see where the gap is, and you've facilitated a space for them to actually come in and participate, you know. And I think I know of the, I had a look and I saw the Blackett Lab family Instagram. I should really put it into the chat so other people can go and see. But it's a great opportunity, an opportunity born out of a necessity, yeah, and something which yourself and Mark Richards have seen, and you've been able to create a space where they can feel that they belong and can achieve. And I think that's really key. And your idea about being a mentor, being a mentor to some of our young people, I think that's a really key thing for, not just for us, but for them. Because I think when you give of yourself to others, you know, others have already given of themselves for you. So I think it's a really key aspect of it. Right, I'm just looking and I'm seeing that we're almost at time. So I thought it would be good to just have a look at something before we close off. And I'm going to ask you a question related to this. Right? Let's see. This was the moment that I'm hoping you can all see this, that you got your MBE. Yeah? All right. This is the moment. Now, this is the earliest picture I could find. I tried to call the house to get another picture, but I found this picture of you, and I'm assuming this was early days in when you arrived at Imperial. So if you had words to say to this younger self, what would you say to them at this point?
I would say to, my younger self, seize every opportunity that comes your way. Never say never.
Brilliant. Seize every opportunity that comes your way and never say never. I like that. I like that. Because you just don't know.
You just don't know.
You just don't know where it's going to lead you, where you're going to end up as a result of an opportunity that comes your way. Yeah? Brilliant. I love it. I love it. Paul, it's been fantastic talking to you. I don't know if anybody else has any final questions.
Say a quick thing.
Mark, come on in.
Oh, just a quick one. Yeah, first of all, it was very insightful. So that's great. Well done, Paul, for giving others an insight. My name was mentioned a few times, so I feel like it's only right for me to put a face behind the name. But what I would say is, from my own perspective, obviously I've known Paul for many, many years. I haven't quite been here as long as Paul, but it's not that far off. So there you go. And I would say that that thing about overcoming self-doubt is an important thing, because Paul will know for many years when I have been an active member of Imperial as one from near enough its inception. And I was always constantly encouraging Paul to get more involved in sort of, because I do a lot of outreach and all that sort of thing. And often it would be a case of, he'd say, well, you know, that's more for that's the experts, that's for the academics. And I would have to convince him, no, you have something that you can offer that people will definitely value and benefit from. And I think once you overcome that, and I remember one time we went to Risley, it was a Risley primary school. It was a predominantly black primary school in North London. And I asked, I convinced Paul to come along and we'd give a joint presentation, you know, and he'd talk about the you know, the space missions and what they're doing in the workshops. And I talk a little bit more about physics as a, you know, as a subject, that kind of thing. And it worked really well. And one of the girls at the primary school said at the end, she said, before, when I grew up, I wanted to drive the bus. Now I want to make the bus.
Fantastic.
And that was purely, you know, because she saw that technician link. So again, sometimes when we think we don't have things to offer, yeah, there is, we're never too young to be mentored, and we're never too old to mentor, and vice versa. Do you understand what I mean? So going back to that Blackett Lab family, it was a case of getting, you know, recent graduates to still be around at least to support current undergraduates. And so, you know, my parents are from Jamaica, and they have a saying, you know, you have to use one hand to wash the other, right?
That's right.
And so therefore, when these graduates, as few as they are, when they leave, we didn't want them to just leave and disappear into the ether. We wanted to keep them because they will become a valuable support base for those coming through. And so it's that same principle. I think we all have something to offer our community. So I'm very pleased to see Paul in all his glory being interviewed here. And I really hope, and I'm sure that he'll be even more instrumental in helping to drive things forward, because he definitely has a huge amount to offer.
I agree with that. That was a ringing endorsement. I'm not going to say anything more. That was excellent. I agree 100% with what Mark has just said. And Paul, you know what? I'm just looking on the chat and I'm seeing people saying, Paul, you're an inspiration. And I have to agree. You're an inspiration to a lot of people, right? Even with your little bit of self-doubt about what you don't know the impact that you're making just by your very presence and the different initiatives which you've helped and are continuing to help to develop. So keep it up. We are all very proud of you, and we're thankful that Imperial has managed to keep hold of such a talented person for the past 30 years. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really, really excellent. So as I said, belated birthday, I don't know if we can call it birthday greetings, but belated celebrations for 30 years, and we hope we'll have you here for another 10 or 15 or 20 years at least.
Steady.
All right. Right. So just go back to that little picture. So once again, say thank you to Paul.
Thank you for having me, Wayne. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next week, we're going to have another Paul Demola, who's a trainee architect and videographer at the University of Cardiff. And so he's going to be giving his experiences of being a student and some of the things which he has focused on in terms of his videography as well. So that's going to be next week at 12:30. And as you know, our YouTube channel with all of the previous interviews is available. So if you just type in this URL at the bottom, you'll be able to see all of the other interviews which we've had. So once again, I'd like to just say thank you to Paul for coming, for his inspiration, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Have a pleasant afternoon. If anyone wants to stay behind and have a quick chat, then you're quite welcome to do so. Just 1 minute.